Hilchas Evel. Now, how does Hilchas Evel come to Sefer Shaftim? Now, Sefer Shaftim starts with Hilchas Sanhedrin, which is understandable. That's the Shaftim. And then Behemshech to Sanhedrin, there's the din of Hilchas Eidus, because the Shaftim paskin al pi Eidus. And then Behemshech Lezeh, there's Hilchas Mamrim, which Hilchas Mamrim is talking about the authority of the Bezdin HaGodel, the authority of Bezdin, and that there's a mitzvah saseh to listen to Bezdin, there's a law not to listen to Bezdin, and there could be a mitzvah of a Zok and Mamri. And Behemshech, the Hilchas Mamrim, there's already the din of Kibud Avim, and the din of Makal Aviv, and Maki Aviv. There's the din which are connected to Mamrim. Now, that is Ben Seder Umeir. And then at the end of Sefer Shaftim, there's Hilchas Malachim, which is also understand the Malachim and Melech is the authority. So that's also Behemshech to Sefer Shaftim. Mashenkin Hilchas Evel, L'chura, how does Hilchas Evel fall into Sefer Shaftim? That's what the Rambam is going to explain soon. Hilchas Evel, Yesh B'chlolim Arba Mitzvahs, Achas Mitzvahs Aseh, V'sholish Mitzvahs Leisaseh, V'zeu Prota. Aleph, Lehisabel Ala Kreven, Zechiv, to be misabel ala kreven. Misabel is an act of avelus, which we'll learn behemshech. What's the act of avelus? That is the chiyuv minatera, the chiyuv midrabanan. But the sabel is not a feeling. It's the feeling of sadness that you come as a result of the fact that the person was nifter. That's in of aninus. Aninus is argoshi belev. Mashenga lisabel is the act of avelus. Lisabel akreven is a chiyuv to be misabel ala kreven. And vafilu koyin mistame umisabel ala krevim. A koyin also has a din of he's mistame umisabel ala krevim. Even though like behemshech, a koyin is not allowed to be mistame lemes, but on krevim he's allowed to be mistame umisabel. He's not only he's allowed to, but he's a chiyuv. There's a chiyuv of avelus, and by a koyin there's a chiyuv of mistame. We'll learn behemshech. A regular person, there's no chiyuv to become tamei. Mashenkin a koyin you mitam meisa al korche. Ala Kraven, and then the Ram continues, Ve'ein odem misabel al harugi bezdin. It's not so usual that the Ram should say so many pratim in the mitzvahs that he mentions in the before the halachas. So here the Ram says kama pratim misabel ala Kraven. Then he says vafilu kayin mistame umisabel ala Kraven. Then he tells another prat Ve'ein odem misabel al harugi bezdin. Then the Ram continues lefi zeh kolalti halachas elu b'sefer zeh. Now, Lefizeh, the Chur is not going what he said before, the Ino de Misabel al Rugi Bezdin. The Chur is going what he's about to say. Lefizeh, Kolalti Alochis Eilu B'Sefer Zeh. Why did he put Sefer Hilchas Ovel? And Ram is coming to Bavarin. How does Hilchas Ovel come into Sefer Shaftim? Because Shehein Me'ein Kvura B'Yei Misa. Shehu Mitzvah Saseh. There's a Mitzvah Saseh, Likber B'Yei Misa. Lisol Nivloseh, and he has to be, that you have to be Tikberen on that day. And that din of Yikberana B'Yema Misa is really a din which is by all Mesim. But Lepel, the Pasuk speaks about it by Harugi Bezdin, which is becoming Hamshech to Sanhedrin. So since this din, which is the mitzvah saseh of Kvura B'Yei Misa, is something which says in Hilchas Sanhedrin, and Behamshech Lezed is the din of Avelus, so Memela, so Hilchas Avelus is already said to Sefer Sheftim. That's the pshat. Lefizeh kolalti alachas elu b'sefer zeh, because shehein evil is me'en kvura b'yei misa, which is a mitzvah saseh, and the din of kvura b'yei misa, which is a mitzvah saseh, belongs in Hilchas in Sheftim, because that's part of Hilchas Sanhedrin. That's Mitzvah Aleph. The Mitzvah Aleph is Lisabel al Hakrevim, and then there's a din that a kohen is mustamein ma'asabel, and al derek, but not on Harugi Bezdin. Then Halacha Mitzvah Beis. Shaliyitami kohen gadol l'krevim. So even though there's a mitzvah saseh l'sabel al krevim, and that mitzvah saseh extends even to a kohen, but it doesn't extend to a kohen gadol fakert. There's a lav shaliyitami, a special lav, as a kohen gadol shouldn't be tamei even to krevim. Gimel shaliyikonis im hames ba'el. A kohen gadol is not allowed to go into a mes b'krevim, and dalid shaliyitami kohen hedyet l'nefesh adam elo l'krevim bulvad. A kohen hedyet shouldn't become tamei l'nefesh adam, only l'krevim adam. So there's a lav that a kohen hedyet is not allowed to become tamei to a regular person. The only one he's allowed to become tamei is only to a karev. So karev, he's allowed to become tamei. In fakert, it's part of the mitzvah saseh of le'isabel. And a kohen gadol has a lav. Even al krevim, he has a special lav. Now l'chur, if a kohen gadol becomes tamei, so a regular kohen gadol becomes tamei, so l'chur, not a karev. So l'churi, he goes into the general din of a kohen is not allowed to become tamei. A kohen is not allowed to become tamei. Then there's a special din that a kohen gadol is now that he even become tummy, even to crave him. There's an extra din that a Kohen Gadol is now become tummy, even to crave him. And then there's another special din for a Kohen Gadol that he's now allowed to be nichnas with a mess tachas oil, which we'll learn behemshech how is a person over. How is the Kohen Gadol over? When is the Kohen Gadol over on this special lav of liikonis im hames ba'el? Ubir mitzvus elu b'prakim elu perikrish. Mitzvus asay lisabel al akrevim. This is the mitzvah asay lisabel al akrevim shenamar v'chalti chatas hayem hayita beini Hashem. So Aaron was saying that since Lepel, he was that day, his sons died, not of Aviyah died, so therefore he's not royally in the chatas because he has the din of Avelus. He's a Ninos, he's an Oynan, he's an Oval, and Memela, so therefore he's not royally in the chatas. So from here we see that you saw that there's a Musa called Avelus, and that warrants that he shouldn't be able to eat kachim. Mitzvahs as Nachamah, mitzvahs as Seila Sabal Akrevim, Shenamar v'achalti chatas hayem hayita beini Hashem. And ve'en avelus min atera ele b'yem rishon bilvad, which shehi yom hamisa v'yom hakvura. When is there avelus min atera? On the first day, but that first day has to be side yom hamisa, side yom hakvura. Because if he dies that day and he's buried that day, so then behemshech after the kvura till the night he has a din of avelus min atera. Mashenkin if he dies and there was no kvura, or there was a kvura and he died the previous day, so there's no din of avelus min atera. Avelus min atera is only the day that Hisai died, and Sai was nikbar on that day. Avol sh'ara shiva, the other 7 days of Avelus, einan din teira. And Avol bishen nemer b'teira vayas la'oviv, Evel shivas yom. So it sounds like in the Teira already, Bisman Yosef, there was already a din of Evel shivas yom. So that the Rambam says, no, nitna teira v'neschat shalocha. So taka, before Matan Teira, there was a mussar called Avelus shivas yom. Masha'inkin, when Teira was given, is nitna teira v'neschat shalocha, and from there onwards, Avelus Minatera is only Yem Echot. That's the Bachalti Chatas HaYem. That only Avelus is Yem Echot. However, Moshe Rabbeinu Tikun Lem Yisro, Shivas Mi Avelus is Shivas Mi HaMishta. There is a musik of Shivas Mi Avelus. But on the other hand, that's a takon of Moshe Rabbeinu. He was Misakin, Sai Shivas Mi Avelus, and Sai Shivas Mi HaMishta. There's Nachamo. Minatera, Avelus is only on the first day. On the first day, the Yom HaMisa, which is also the Yom HaKfuras. After the Yom HaKfura, that's when it's Chal the Avelus. And then there's Avelus only for the first day. The musik of extending it for 7 days is only Midrabanan. And also if the Kfura was not on the first day, so it's also not a Minatera. Halacha Beis. Me'emasai is Chayav Odin Be'evel. When does the Avelus begin? It's not when the person dies. No, Mishayista Magel. When the gale was closed, and the gale is like the stone that you put on top of the caver in order to close the caver, which now would also be like the offer today. We don't put it with a stone. You close the caver with the offer. So when you put the offer into the caver and you close the caver, so that's at that point in time begins Avelus. Avol kol zman shelo nigbar hames eini aser b'davim min advarim she'avel aser b'hem. All those things that an avel is aser doesn't apply until nigbar hames. B'pnei tam zeh Rachatz David HaMelech v'soch shemes hayeled kedem she'yikaver, even though his son died and he was mechuyev b'Avelus, but nevertheless he was Rachatz v'soch because Avelus didn't begin until Yistam Hagel. Halacha Gimel. Harugi Malchus she'ein manichnes with the Malchus of Goyim she'ein manichan esam lihikaver. So no, you're saying that the Avelus begins by the Shas HaKfura. What happens? You have people that were killed. And Lepel, the Malchus is now letting them be Nikpar. So the question is, at what point in time does the Avelus begin? Me'emasai maschilin lesabel aleim, v'limnei shiva, and then to start counting the Shivas mi Avelus, and there is a Deshleishim, mishinisyaishu minisha lemelech lekavrim. When they were miyayish and they gave up from the hope of being able to ask the Melech to bury them, so that at that point in time, that's when the Avelus begins. Again, this is Avelus Midrabanan, because Minatera, it only is B'yem HaMisa and right after the Kfura. Over here, Pashas, we're not talking about the Yem HaMisa, so Memela, even if there would be a Kfura, it would be only Midrabanan, and there wasn't a Kfura either. So Memela, this din that it starts, Mishnis Yaishu, Milvakish Lemelech L'Kovram, is a din Dirabanan. But at that point in time starts the Yemei Avelus. Aval Pishal in Nisyaishu Malik Nevesam, even though they're still hoping to be able to steal the body and be able to bury him, but Lepil at that point in time, when they're no longer expecting, they're no longer hoping to be able to ask the Melech to give him to them to bury, so then that's considered the starting of Avelus. Halacha Dalet, mi shetava benor, someone that drowned in a river, or Misha Chlosei, we're talking about a nor, which is not a Maim Shein Lim Sof. Because Maim Shein Lim Sof, there's no Avelis, because we don't want people to think that we know that he died, because look, you can't be Mata the Isha. In other words, we can't, if you make Avelis, it'll be Ki'ilu, that we're saying that he taka died. Masha'inkin was talking about Maim Sheyesh Lim Sof, so he has a din of a mess. But Lapel, we can't find him, we don't know where he is. Misha Tavi Benor, or Misha Chlosei Chayiro, is Mishanisiyai Shalavaksha. When they stop looking for the body, at that point in time starts the Avelis. Now, Matzu Eivarim Eivarim, they found the Eivarim Eivarim, and they buried those Eivarim Eivarim, is Ein Menulei Ache Yimtza Reshe Verube a Yisiyai Shalavaksha. When the Yisiyai Shalavaksha, so then even without finding anything, you start Avelis. But if you weren't Misyayish Mulvakshay, they found Eivarim, and they buried those Eivarim. So in order for him to be considered a burial, the Mamela starts the Chiv Avelis is only when they found Rosh Verube. At that point in time starts the Avelis. Halacha Hey. So we learned over here that Minatera, if a person dies and that day he was buried, that's when the Avelis begins. If a person was killed and Lepeil is killed by the Malchus and they're not letting him be buried, so Avela doesn't begin until you reach a point where you're no longer going to ask the Melech to be able to bury him. In other words, even if you're still hoping to be able to steal the body and bury him, but once you give up hope and being able to ask the Melech to bury him, at that point in time starts the Chiyav Avelis. And again, the Avelis is Narbonah. That is that when a person was Achlosi Chayiro, a person drowned in a river, so then also we say that once you give up hope in trying to find him, that's when it's considered the Avelis begins. If you find him, you find parts of the body, and you go ahead and bury those parts of the body, so if those parts of the body is Rosh Verube, so that also starts Avelis. Mashenkin, if you didn't find Rosh Verube, it doesn't start the Avelis until you give up hope in trying to find him. Halacha Hey. They would send them away to a different place in order to be mekaber. They don't know when he will actually be buried. Is so over there the Avelis begins from when they turn back. In other words, they give him over to someone else that they should bring him to somewhere, and they don't know when he will actually be buried. So then when the Avelim turned back and they stopped being Malava, as you be Malava the mess for a certain amount of time, then they're giving it over to those people that are going to bring it to some other Medina. So Memela, so when they turn back and they're no longer being Malava, that's at that point in time begins the Avelis. Halacha Vov. Hanefolim is ein misablim aleim. A nefel is someone that's not a bar kiyama, someone that was born that wasn't a bar kiyama, so there's no din Avelis on a nefel. If he didn't live for 30 days, so then Ari's a nefel. Then that was a nefel. He wasn't muchatchila bar kayoma. Afilu mesbiyim shleishim. He actually died on the 30th day. He lived for 30 days, and on the 30th day he died. There's also a misab molov. That's talking about if you don't really know that he was neilad latisha. However, you know for sure that he was a bar kayom and he was neilad latisha chadoshim burim, and lepel he died before the 31st day. So afilu mes b'yem shenelad, even if he actually died on that day that he was born, is misab molov. So again, if a person is born and we don't really know 100% that he was a ben tisha, and lepel he dies even on the 30th day, so we assume he's a nefil. And then there's no Avelis. Masha'inkin, someone that we know for sure that he was Neilad Latisha, there was 9 months from when he was conceived, and now he was born. So even if he dies on the day that he was born, nevertheless he doesn't have a din of a nefil, and there is a din of Avelis. Now Ben Tisha Chadoshim Shnelad Mes, if it was a Ben Tisha Chadoshim, when he came out L'Avar Elim, he was no longer alive, or Uben Shmeina Shemes Afalach Filal Achar Shleishim Yem, you know for sure he was a Ben Shmeina, and he died la'achar shleishim yom, or umisha yotza b'chutech mesuris. A person came out, he was like alive. He was technically alive, but he was b'chutech mesuris. He was b'chutech means he was cut up. In other words, he was alive, but he was breathing. But on the other hand, he was all cut up. Or mesuris, some gegeris merusis or merutzis, because he was banged up. He wasn't a person that looked like that he's shaychus to live. He was in a condition that wasn't shaychus to live. So therefore, harei ze knefel. Ve'ein mis'abel maleim v'lei mis'askin imoim. So all the dinim that there's no din of avelus on him, and all these dinim of kriya and levaya, all these special dinim that are b'negei ames, doesn't apply to such a person. It's nachama. Let's make the sequel. If a person was born, and we don't really know how many chadoshim the Ibor was, so if he lived for over 30 days, we assume he was a bar kayoma. And if he lived less than 30 days, we assume he was a nefil. Even if he died on the 30th day, we assume he was a nefil. Now, if he was definitely born Letitia, he was born Letitia, so even if he dies on the day he was born, he's considered a ben kiyoma, and then there's a din of avelis. If he was definitely a ben shmeina, if he was definitely a ben shmeina, so then again, so even if he lived more than 30 days, he's considered a nefil. He's considered a nefil. And if he came out mechutech, even if he was a ben tisha, but if a person, he came out mechutech, or merusis, or mesuris, he came out cut up, in other words, he came out in a manner that he wasn't able to live, so then even though kololei chadashim lepel, he was for 9 months, the pregnancy was 9 months, nevertheless, harizik and nefil, and therefore, ve'ein mis'abim aleim, ve'ein mis'askin imoim, because Mulchatchila he didn't come out as a bar kayom. Now that is if someone was a ben tisha, but lepel he came out mess, so there's no din of avelus. Halachates, kol harugi malchus, those people that are killed through the melech, is afal pi shebedin hamelech nergu, uvateir nosli rishus lahargam. We're talking about a melech Yisrael. He killed him, and yeshli rishus lahargam. Nevertheless, harei elu mis'ablum aleim. So nevertheless, there's a din avelus on them. Even though they were killed, it's a din malchus. Now there's harugi bezin, which we learned before, mentioned earlier in the mitzvah. Harugi bezin, there's no din avelus on harugi bezin. Someone that dies with either skila, sreifa, herig, gechenek, through bezin, so that person, there's no din avelus for him. Masha'inkin harugi malchus is always nerag through herig, but I'll call upon him harugi malchus, there is a din of avelus. Even though he was killed, with din hamelech, the melech had a right to kill him, it was bedin, but nevertheless, there's still avelus for him. Nachamal. Kol harugi malchus, afal pi shebedin hamelech nergu, vateru nasnu rishus lahargan, and knows he was killed kedin, aber harei elu misabel, the crave ma misabel, ve'imenen mehem kol dover, anything that applies to a novel, which is a hesped, and also b'negei kriya, all these dinim that apply to someone that dies, also apply to someone that was haruge malchus. Umamenam lemelech, their moment goes to the melech, which is part of the din of haruge malchus, that their money is confiscated and given to the king, and v'nikbarim b'kivrei aviseim, and they're buried b'kivrei aviseim. That's talking about haruge malchus. Avol kol haruge bezin is emis abim aleim. There's no avelus on haruge bezin. Avol einanim, but lepel there is einanim. Einanim is the tsar which a person has in the heart. She'ein ninos ele belev, and therefore the din is l'moshel, and oinen is not allowed to eat ma'aser sheni. So b'negei someone the harugi bezin. So even though lepel harugi bezin there's no din avelus, but there's a din aninos. So memela he would be also b'ma'aser sheni. She'ein ninos ele belev ein nikbarim aviseim achi yisachal abosar, until they decompose. Umamenam liyorshem, and the mom is liyorshem. So b'kitzur there's a din of harugi malchus, and there's a din of harugi bezin. Harugi malchus there's a din of avelus, and there's a din also that they're nikbarim b'kivrei aviseim and mamenam lemelech. When you get harugi bezin, there's no din avelus, and lepel mamenam liyorshem. But on the other, they're not nigbar b'kivrei aviseim. You have to wait until she's achwa abosar, and only then could you be mekaber harugi bezin b'kivrei aviseim. Halacha yud. Kol ha-porshim b'darkei tzibur. People that are porshim b'darkei tzibur, what does that mean? Ve'emu anoshim sheporko ela mitzvus me'al tzavorim. In other words, they're not misnaig with the oil of Torah mitzvahs. Ve'enu nechlolim b'chlal Yisrael b'asiyas ha-mitzvahs. They don't join Klal Yisrael in doing mitzvahs, or v'kovid ha-miyadis, or be mechavid yontiv, or v'yeshivas b'atei knesiyas b'atei midrashas, coming to shul to beis medrash. El hareim kav b'nei chedin la'atzmon, Kishar homis. They're like other nations. In other words, they don't consider themselves part of Klal Yisrael. They're not acting as part of Klal Yisrael. They're not doing the mitzvahs part of Klal Yisrael. They're bnei chen la'atzmon kishar homis. These people, and v'chein haminim are those people that don't believe in Torah, don't believe in Torah Shebal Peh. The Rambam said before that someone that doesn't believe in Torah Shebal Peh goes into the gather of a min, or v'hamishumadim, someone that Rahman al-Tzani was mishamed, knows he converted to another religion, or v'hamosim, people that give over Yidden to the goyim, either momenam or begufam, is called elu ein mesablim aleim. So again, the people that are parshim medarkei hatzibur, that's the first category the Rambam said. Then he spoke about the minim and the mishumodim and the mosrim. Is called elu ein mesablim aleim elachayim ushar kreveim loishim levonim umisatim levonim fakert. They put on nice clothes va'ichlum v'sheisim v'smeichim. And what's the simcha she'avdu seinav shalach kodesh baruch hu v'aleim hakosav eimer alim netzanecha Hashem esnu. That Mitzanecha Hashem esnu, and therefore these people go into together of people which fakert. There's a simcha that they're dying. Now, just like the Rambam said before in Hilchos Mamrim, when the Rambam spoke about people that their parents were already minim and their grandparents were already minim, and mele, they don't really have a din of a minim, a fakert. They have to be niskar to Yiddishkeit. So the Chura, the Pashas over here also, this din that the Rambam is saying, that a misablim aleim, and all these dinim of leifshim levanim, mishsatim levanim, which the Rambam says, the Rambam speaks about people that were parking aleim, again, people that they themselves were perik. Mashenkin, the children of those people that were perik, and Aldera, the children of those people that were minim, but pashtas don't go into this category of misablim aleim. There is misablim aleim. Because lepel, these people are people that be'etzem, they're yidden, and the fact that they are what they are is as a result of their environment. They're kitinik shenishbel bein akum, and mele, that's the fact that they are what they are wouldn't be a reason that they aren't, that there's no din avelis on them. In other words, they have to have taka krevim which are shaykh to misabel on them. But if l'mashal you have a person that his be'emes was a person that his father was already that matzev of pershim medarkei hatzibur, and his grandfather was pershim medarkei hatzibur, and his grandchild became someone that became connected to the tzibur. He was niskar to Yiddishkeit. And Lepel, he has a father which was completely far from Yiddishkeit, but his father was far from Yiddishkeit because he was a son of someone that was far from Yiddishkeit, or an enkel of someone far from Yiddishkeit. So the pashtus, there's a chiyav avelis. This din that there's no chiyav avelis only refers to those people that were actually pershim medarkei hatzibur, or people that weren't minim, that were born in places, in a house where they learned about Torah, and he himself, midayti haro, like the Rambam said before, mishri yaslibai, midayti akala, he decided to become a min. Halacha Yud Aleph. Hama'abid atzmi ladas, someone that was ma'abid atzmi ladas, he committed suicide. Ein misasking imei lechol davar. You don't do anything, all the inyanim that you normally do for a mess, as we said before, that there's the din of kriya, and there's a din of hesped, all these things, ein misasking imei lechol davar, v'le misabn olav, v'le maspid neisen, there's no hesped. Aval, oimden olav b'shura, v'ein olav birchas avelim, v'chol davar shu kavod l'chaim. I know there's a certain inyan that you say birchas avelim, which is a special nusach the Rambam is going to say later on in Perek Yud Beis, the nusach of the birchas avelim that you say achenu, that tinuchamu, but there's a special bracha of avelim, and there's also that those people that are the cravim of the mess. So there's a shura that's made, the shura, and everyone passes and says to nuchamit, says a nechama to these people. So einachnami, these people are not misabel. They're not. There's no chiv of avelis of shiva yom. But on the other end, you could be menachem them. Because there's no stira. They're taka not acting the dinam of avelos, but on the other end, people are coming to be menachem them. Let's read it again. Am abed atzmi ladas is ein misaskinim lechol davar. In other words, all the things that you normally do for a mess, you don't do for someone that's misab. Ma'abed atzmi ladas, and also v'lei misabel olav and v'lei maspid neisei. However, emden olav b'shura, you are emden olav b'shura, which means in the Beis HaKvaris after he was buried. So you make a shura in order to be menachemim. And there's also a special nusach of birchas avelim, which you say b'chlolus to all the avelim. V'chol davar shel kavod l'chaim, anything that's a kavod l'chaim, because that's the kavod l'chaim. It's not a kavod l'mes. You're being mechabed the people that were left behind, and those people you're being menachem, even though they're not avelim. They're not avelim in the sense they're not acting avelus. But on the other hand, since they lost this relative, so therefore you're being menachem them. Now, who do you consider to be a manabed atzmi ledas? Leisha ola leisha gag v'nofel umes. Person went up to the top of a roof and then he fell and he died. So you're not going to start saying, well, we'll assume that he jumped off the roof. We say a person he says, I'm going up leisha gag, in order to be ma'abed atzmi ledas. He went up angrily. He was like very mitzvah, and then he went up to the roof and v'nofel umes. So then it's Hariza Becheska, Sha'av Yiber Asma Ladas. They saw him that he was chanuk, he was choked, and he was hanging on a tree, or haruk, or mushlach al gabi saife. So we don't assume that he did it to himself. And therefore, you misasik with him. So you just don't assume that a person was a misasik atzmeledas. You can't just assume that. You have to, if the person said that he's going to be ma'abed atzmeledas, and then he went behemshech what he said, and lepel he died, so then we could assume that he was a ma'abed atzmeledas. But otherwise, we never on that he's becheskes kol hamesim misaskin imei ve'ein meinim imenu davar. Now the Ramban holds that you could do avelos on someone that was ma'abed atzmeledas, because we could assume that he was yotzei midaite. In other words, he was yotzei midaite, and as a result of that, he was ma'abed atzmeledas. And it's brought down that since it's a b'zoyin mishpacha, so therefore you could be seimech on das. Some sefer writes that you could be seimech on the das of the Ramban in order to be misabel on someone that seemingly was a ma'abed atzmeledas, based on this shita of the Ramban, that even if he was be'emes ma'abed atzmeledas, but nevertheless we could assume that he was yotzei midaite before he did it, and therefore that wouldn't be included in this person that ain't misabel malav.